I'd woken up that morning with some real itchy welts, and while I tried to spend most of the day ignoring them, as I got ready for bed, I decided to check and see to make sure there wasn't anything in the bed that might have caused my situation. Nothing makes you pray for an allergy to sheets like a possible infestation. I pulled back the sheet of my bed, thinking I'd have to peek beneath the mattress or look behind the headboard, but instead there was a bed bug sitting right on the edge of the mattress at the Comfort Inn & Suites on Barone Street. The hotel's night manager, an apologetic girl named Belinda, changed us to a new room, which we nearly tore apart, looking for any more of the little buggers. But it was too late. The heady haze of the day had dissipated. We could just drive home, I suggested. It's a 6-hour drive from Tallahassee to New Orleans. The time was 2:30 in the morning. Emily pressed her hand to her throat and nodded. 20 minutes later, we were speeding back west on I-10 across Lake Pontchartrain. I tried to practice that pronunciation a few times and I still murdered it. Thank you. And I wasn't sure that we hadn't escaped something somehow, that if I squinted into the rearview mirror, there weren't going to be people with pitchforks and torches behind us. Emily turned to me and said, "We can never tell anyone about this." I nodded my head. You know, this is the kind of thing that binds people for life. This also sounded right, and as we flew out of Louisiana, I was committed to our pact of secrecy. True, she'd break the pact when introducing me at my own reading a few months later, which is why I can tell the story here. But that's what's great about Emily and Emily's writing. There are no half measures. Dogs get left behind dumpsters at gas stations, and the cabins at Baptist summer camp have names like Hannah's Hell Haters and Greta's God Girls. This lack of half measures gives her work an emotional validity that's arresting, saying shit like it really is and not being afraid of reality even when reality sucks. When she says, "I hate you," she sometimes means "I love you," and if you can't figure it out, well, that's your own problem. Spending time with Emily's fiction is like spending time with Emily herself. It changes you. But that's okay. Change is good. Ladies and gentlemen, Emily Alford.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. Charlie Beckerman, you hot slut. Thank you for that introduction. Is this good? Yes? Yeah. Alright. So my story is called Play Fight. Marianne is at my door clinging to a canvas grocery bag. A lacy red bra sits on top of a pile of clothing. A pajama leg tumbles out one side. Never makes any sense. When she blinks in the late afternoon sun, the shadow of her eyelashes darkens the little lines under her eyes. The red circle high on her left cheek is the only spot of color on her washed-out face. This probably isn't the first time it's happened, but it's the first time I've been asked to care. When my mother called a half hour ago, she was breathless with the excitement of it all. "That Fils de Putain punched her in the face!" she told me by way of hello. She plays bunco with Marianne's mother on Wednesdays, and I've been kept abreast of Marianne's marital trouble for years. "You're the only person she can go to in Lafayette," she said. I could picture my mother on her back porch among her ferns, in a wobbly rattan chair, balancing the phone on her shoulder with a cup of coffee in one hand and a lit Doral in the other, telling Marianne's mother that my house was always open before she'd even called me. That Marianne was free to stay as long as she liked. "We haven't seen each other in years," I told her. "Well, what's that matter?" my mother asked me through a long exhale. As if two girls wedged between country boys in a pickup truck chucking beer cans at stop signs on the back roads of a shithole logging town on the Cajun Baptist border of Louisiana were a contract. "She's your best friend," my mother said matter-of-factly, and I could hear the flick of her lighter in the background. Do the poor girl a kindness. "She's not my best friend," I said, but I knew as well as she did that it was a contract. Even if I had lived in the same city as Marianne for 5 years without speaking, girlhood in Pine Prairie is a contract. I knew that no matter what I said, Marianne was on her way. There was a time when I might have been happy to have Mary Ann show up battered and desperate on my doorstep. A time when I searched my face with hers in mine, measuring my wide nose to her straight one, my thin lips to her wide pout. But those days are over, long over. And now that Mary Ann is here with greasy roots and the beginnings of a bruise, I take no joy in it. Your house is nice, she says. Is it? I say, come in. I almost pat her back as she passes me in the doorframe, but my hand hovers above the sharp little arrows of her shoulder blades jutting up through her blue-white skin for a second too long, until she's through the door and I'm left holding my hand in the air behind her. Inside, she throws her bag on the sofa. The red bra tumbles off the pile, landing under my coffee table, but neither of us moves to pick it up. She moves her eyes from the cast-iron stone fireplace to the unvarnished farmhouse-style crown molding to charcoal sketches of New Orleans before the storm that lined the hallway to the bedrooms. I watch the spot on her cheek. Mary Ann doesn't look at me when she asks, "Am I as bad as you expected?" She picks up a small brass bird cage from my mantel and puts it back down again. The truth is she isn't. I expected her bloody, sobbing. She's thin all right and pale, and there's the mark. Otherwise, the matter of her face seems no more important to her than Father Boulanger finding her with the B.C. Andrews in her Bible during catechisms. There's a scruffiness to her now, standing among my neat surfaces that wasn't there in her schoolgirl days. It's as if she's been rubbed with steel wool, her beauty only visible in flashes, the curve of a collarbone, the arch of an eyebrow. I wouldn't recognize her if I saw her on the street. I don't know whether I'm supposed to tell her how bad she looks or how good she looks. Before I can say anything, she smiles at me. If nothing else, her teeth are still perfect. "If you have plans," she begins and lets the sentence hang. I did have plans. But Saturday nights at the wine bar across the street are just other singles from the neighborhood having a glass or two and then going home. It'd show up if you could make it. "Nothing more important than you," I tell her, with an emphasis on the you, like she doesn't owe me a thing for this. She turns slightly and surveys the room again. "Mama tells me you decorate other people's houses." "I do. I thought your house would be different." I grew up on an old farm that had faded back to scrub pine. A brown and gold historic marker, slanted sideways in a runnel of eroded silt loam, pointed like a crooked finger down my family's gravel driveway to our double dog trot. When I tell my clients this, they get excited. I know the real Louisiana, the one they want in small doses in their brand new bayou-front homes. But the real Louisiana is dirt under your fingernails and long tangled hair, burns from the four-wheeler engine tracing the insides of your calves. It's bank tellers and oil field roughnecks trying to keep the bees out of the walls of their grandparents' century-old homes, even as the cypress wood floorboards rot beneath their feet. It's the men who own the oil and the timber, moving their families across town, behind gates with codes and into Acadiana-style mansions made of sheetrock and marble. The Louisiana my clients want is the legend of Kate Chopin and the Kingfish, digital prints of weeping oak trees and frames and coffee table books, showcasing silver tureens of gumbo and fiddling Cajuns. I give them what they ask for. Mary Ann was as rich as little girls get in the country. She lived behind the gates of the only planned community in Pine Prairie, in a house with a plan called Grandeur, complete with a 3-car garage and a separate living room just for games. She wore silk pajamas when she invited me to stay the night and slept in a waterbed under a yellow canopy. I slept on a trundle beside her. "Your toenails," she told me, pointing to the unkempt talons on my mosquito-bitten feet. "You'll pop the bed." In my own living room, I understand what I'm meant to. Mary Ann doesn't owe me a thing. "I'm roasting a chicken for when you get hungry," I tell her. I'm smiling, but I can't control the cold in my voice. She moves to my white couch and sits lightly in the middle of the fluffy cushion. She sees her bra under the coffee table and reaches to grab it, bunching it up in one hand and shoving it down the side of her grocery bag. "I'm vegan," she tells me. I try very hard not to make a face, but I must because she says, "I'm sorry." The words are soft and flat, not defensive but not pleading either. They fill my quiet living room, my sleepy condo, and my pretty street, and seem to stretch back and forward at once, from Pine Prairie to my wasted chicken to her dirty hair and bony limbs, poking out of a sad sundress, and swollen cheek on a face that might as well be a recovered memory from a past life. Anyone else would cry now, but Mary Ann is not a weeper, and neither am I. It's one of the reasons we used to like each other. I assume I'm driving her to the Whole Foods in my neighborhood, but Mary Ann tells me to keep driving. We cross Ambassador Caffrey and head toward the University of Louisiana. The streets get narrow. Coffee shops, art galleries, and shitty duplexes pop up on either side like pimples. The few clients I have on this side of town call this neighborhood transitional. Their proud voices intoning that what they mean is black. What they mean is that they bought their 2-story garden homes for $20,000 and need me to fit a sofa and a fire pit into the new backyard cabana nestled behind the privacy fence. Mary Ann tells me to take a right, tells me to park on the street. We're not at a grocery store. "That's my house," she tells me, and points to a post-war bungalow with a low column porch that would have been cute if not for the ankle-high weeds on either side of the cracked walkway. To the right of her house is a low red brick apartment complex. To the left is another bungalow, this one persimmon-colored, freshly trimmed azalea bushes lining the walkway. The sun is setting. On Mary Ann's porch, gold light bounces off a dozen brown and green beer bottles. "We had a party last night," she says. "I see that. He's not home." I never met Mary Ann's husband. I was in Baton Rouge while she was in college here, meeting the man who would later punch her in the face and quitting school with a year to go. It was so easy for us. Governor Blanco picked up the tabs for all our tuition, and classrooms were packed wall to wall with country kids in front of college edition textbooks, the first in their families to see what it was all about. We smiled politely and thanked the professors for their trouble, and for the most part they wanted Louisiana's grand educational experiment to succeed. When my mother said it must be so hard, her head full of Tweety colleges she had seen on TV, I didn't have the heart to tell her, not really. When my mother told me that Mary Ann had dropped out to marry an Air Force petty officer, I rolled my eyes. Of course college would be too common for her. Of course she would prefer to imitate victory rolls and box blouses, play war bride instead of college girl. Still, I was jealous when they moved to Germany. Imagine Mary Ann eating schnitzel and seeing Paris. I checked the regrets box on my RSVP to Mary Ann's wedding and told my mother my plans were unbreakable so many times that I no longer remember if the tried-out winter formal really was that night or if I made it up. I sent a $50 gift card to Bed Bath & Beyond by way of congratulations. He works offshore now and Mary Ann stays home. My mother tells me that most of their money comes in the form of a check signed by Mary Ann's parents and deposited the first of every month in a Pine Prairie savings and loan account in her name. "Do you need to go in?" "No," she says, but doesn't tell me to drive on. She checks her phone and watches the house. In profile, in this light, Mary Ann really is still beautiful. Her neck is long and white, her cheeks are high and hollow. The spot is almost a bruise now, the color of a ripe cherry. Years ago, kids from 3 parishes came to Mary Ann's backyard to drink champagne and toast the end of high school. She and I wore matching periwinkle dresses from a boutique in New Orleans, our mother's gift to us. We were pretending to be college girls already, drunk and wobbly in heels that sank into the soft ground behind the house, sharing a stolen Doral. Mary Ann clinked her glass against mine and said we had to stay friends. "I'll come to LSU and you'll come to UL. Once a month," she said. "You can go now," she tells me. I put the car in drive without looking at her. I'm tired of looking at her. "What happened?" She points left. "Turn here," she says. The store is in the shell of an old gas station. The abandoned pumps are painted pink and green. On the awning there are light patches that still spell out Exxon, but over that, Cedar Point Grocery is sprawled in cramped cursive with black house paint. I park at the green pump. Someone has written "Love" over the price ticker in silver marker. Next door, a ragged convenience store has a window full of faded signs in primary colors boasting discount cigarettes and hot boudin. Men in stained white t-shirts sit on the curb passing a tall boy wrapped in a brown paper bag. This is the sort of neighborhood I was only allowed to see from inside the car as a child, when my mother drove to the liquor store in the bad part of town. The people of the jobs avoided in daylight. They had the best sausage in Pine Prairie. "Don't get out for anything," she'd tell me, locking the door for good measure and returning a few minutes later with a plastic sack containing a month's worth of boudin and blanc, its clear casing straining with red clay-colored pork and rice. My car is brand new. I almost tell Marianne I'm going to stay with it, but she's already slamming the door behind her. Cedar Point Grocery smells like raw grain and cumin. Behind the counter, a thin guy wears yet another stained white t-shirt and reads a paperback. "Hey, you," he says to Marianne, with a smile that vanishes as his eyes find her cheek. When he asks what happened, his tone is measured. Marianne waves a hand in front of her face. Her wedding ring is a small silver band with a single pearl in the center. "Nothing," she says. "Stupid." The clerk raises his shoulders in a neat shrug and bows his head to his novel, but his thick eyebrows don't hide the fact that his eyes follow Marianne to the produce bins. He catches me watching him and gives a small, guilty grin before he turns back to her. At Marianne's graduation party, I hid behind the door of the game room and watched Marianne beside the pool table with Dylan Roby. He went to school in Laplace and should have been her boyfriend. He had blue eyes that glowed out of a dark Cajun face, and was one of the few boys I couldn't imagine sun-scorched and timber-yard dirty, prematurely middle-aged like the rest of our classmates would be in half a decade, drinking natural light from silver cans while they played bourrée with their cousins at their mother's kitchen tables on Sunday. Marianne had played with the end of his tie. She told him they had to stay friends, that he had to come to Lafayette and visit her, and she'd go to Ruston and visit him, at least once a month, she'd said. He took something out of his pocket and gave it to her, a black velvet jewelry box. Her back was to me, so I could only see her shoulder blades move beneath her blue spaghetti straps as she opened it. Her blonde bun moved from side to side as she shook her head no, his embarrassed smile as she passed the little box back. It was probably earrings, but I never told her I'd seen. Marianne is holding up a bunch of leaves wrapped in twine. She is peeling the leaves back one by one to inspect the center of the bunch. "Is that guy your friend?" I ask. But what I mean is, who are your friends? Why aren't you leaf shopping with someone who cares about you? But then when I push my cart through the wide, well-lit aisles of the Whole Foods on my side of town, I'm alone. The cashiers don't know me. "Sort of," she says. She appraises lentils, holding up one bag and then another. Marianne tells me she could do a soup. She asks me if I like couscous, and I say it's fine. Behind the counter, the cashier alternates between flipping his pages and watching us. I can cook. I can make a piquant fricassee. On Dish Pass Sundays at the first of the month, people from my office, middle-aged Acadian women, compliment me on the fact that my sauce never congeals. My fish never tastes fishy. So I know that there is nothing that tastes like anything in Marianne's basket. I watch the spot on her face, expecting it to do something, undulate, darken before my eyes. I wonder if her husband punched her because he was hungry. At the counter, our basket of nothing comes to $60. Marianne and the clerk's eyes meet. "Maurice, I don't have any money," she says as if he knew. "Come on," he says and rolls his eyes, but he's already reaching beneath the counter to pull out a blue spiral notebook. There are bottles of wine in a makeshift plywood rack by the counter. I grab a bottle of red and a bottle of white. "I've got it," I say. Marianne and Maurice look at me as if they'd forgotten I was there. He puts his little notebook away and I hand him 4 20s. Dylan Roby gave me HPV. Not at Marianne's party. Later that summer, in the cab of his Chevy Silverado at a different party, where boys were burning tires in a shallow pit, and everyone knew not to stand too close or the heavy smoke would leave dark stains on the front of our jean shorts. He had a Florida-shaped mole on one of his shoulders, flat and ragged on the edges. I looked down on it while I was on top of him and couldn't stop wondering what was in that box. Marianne uses a Dutch oven to make what looks like oatmeal threaded with spinach. I set the table. My overcooked chicken sits withered and lonely in a baking pan on top of my range. I don't want to admit that it's good, but it is good. Spicy and warm, the couscous firm but not hard, so I say, it's pretty good. Marianne thanks me and pushes her mush around with a fork. She matches every bite she takes with a long drink of red wine. Her bruise is plum-colored now and makes her green eyes look greener. I didn't get the bad HPV. No genital warts erupted in corncob rows along my privates. A physician's assistant told me I was lucky to get the quiet kind, the kind that might cause cancer but probably wouldn't. As far as I know, Marianne never slept with Dylan Roby, never saw the mole or had any nitrous oxide sprayed in her vagina by a nurse's assistant. She got earrings and turned them down. By the time they froze the precancer cells off the walls of my ovaries and they dripped out dead into my panties, I was living in Baton Rouge and had stopped speaking to Marianne. Her glass is empty. I refill it. Do you want to know what happened? She asks. If you want to tell me. She drinks, so I drink. For a second, she closes her eyes like it happened a long time ago and she's trying to remember. I married an asshole, she says. Can I smoke in here? I motion to the door behind my kitchen table that leads to the back patio. She goes into the living room and I can hear her rifling through her bag as I fill a glass with club soda. When she comes back, we move to the porch with our wine glasses and the bottle. She lights a cigarette but seems content just to hold it. I watch gray smoke trail over the railing and out to the street. Across from us at the wine bar, smokers in business suits tell jokes around a potted tree. Mosquitoes bite our forearms. He's not bad all the time. She uses the glowing tip of her cigarette to punctuate her speech, whipping it back towards her chest and then forward again. He drinks, she says, tipping ash into the soda. It fizzes. I drink, she says. As if to prove it, she takes another long pull of red wine, and she's more animated now than she's been all day. She's telling me that someone burned a hole in her rug last night. It probably was me, she says, pointing the cigarette towards herself again. And there's the story of the fight. She said something, he said something, none of it very interesting. The last time I saw Marianne before tonight, I drove up from Baton Rouge to stay with her in the college apartment she shared with 3 other girls. It was only an hour, but felt like longer. Like I'd made a grand gesture to know her life, even as I began mine without her. During rush, I told the girls that I'd been a debutante, cryptically explaining that my father was in oil. To become a tried-out, I'd told them that I was Marianne. When I got to her apartment, she introduced a tan, thick-thighed girl named Bethany as her best friend. Bethany, she'd said to the girl, who drank a red daiquiri out of a puff-painted plastic cup. This is my friend from home, Jessica. The girl blinked at me stupidly through another long slurp. Jessica? With the toenails? She said, and Marianne laughed, and I laughed, and I knew I wasn't coming back to Lafayette to visit her ever again. Marianne is finishing her story with a final flourish of her cigarette. I mean, she says, it's not... I know he hit me, but I hit him. And she's waiting for me to say something. Piano music reaches us from across the street. A group of women in short, tasteful dresses laugh loudly at something neither of us can hear, and I can't think of anything to say. That place looks nice, Marianne says, watching the women. We could walk over. She moves a hand down her body and over her sundress in one sweeping motion. Could we? She says. And she's right. I live one place and she lives another. You can't go back, I tell her. She drops her cigarette into the soda and lights another. This one she smokes in short, thoughtful little puffs. Her glass is empty. I refill it. She thanks me. In high school, I once told a group of girls that Mary Ann was the most selfish person I'd ever met. At the end of the day, she came to me crying with the girls behind her, and I knew that the tears were a show. I'd never seen her cry before. It made her look really ugly. Black rivulets and mascara mingling with her pink blush and making little pools around her chin. I tried to cry too, but couldn't. The girls called me a bitch. When I got home, my mother was drinking her 3 o'clock coffee in front of the television. She flipped it off while I told her the story, leaving out the part where I actually said what I was accused of. She curled and uncurled her short fingers around the kitten bug. "You girls love to play at fighting," she told me. I open the bottle of white and drink another glass in the time it takes Mary Ann to speak. All she says is, "I know." This is my part. I'm supposed to speak again, to give her a list of reasons she's not to go home. Mary Ann looks different to me than she did this afternoon. In the time it took to tell her story, her face changed, smoothed somehow, and became the face of a high school girl. I could be her mother on my varnished deck chair, an unused terracotta hibachi in the corner of my porch. I know where her friends are. They're back in her neighborhood playing at genteel poverty. Maybe at another party on someone else's front porch, ignoring someone else's boss-cross husband who is maybe a little too drunk, a little too loud, polite company. Water seeks its own level, my mother loves to say about people in Pine Prairie. I wonder what level I'm at that Mary Ann sought me. I can almost hear her on her phone wailing to her real mother. It's the last place I have to go, and meaning it. I might be the last person in Lafayette still pretending to care about Mary Ann. Real or fake, I am Mary Ann's best friend. I should tell her that she can stay here as long as she likes. Tell her she's still the beautiful girl in the periwinkle dress that sent Pine Prairie boys running to jewelry stores, but defining her as Mary Ann makes me Jessica, with the toenails, and it feels as if I've been waiting for this moment a very long time. Or go back. I don't know, Mary Ann. I'm not you. It takes a minute for the sting to set in. When it does, her eyes narrow, her jaw tightens. Can I at least stay the night? Well, it's not like I'd let you sleep at a shelter. Thanks, she says flatly. Mary Ann, we both know the truth. You'll either go back or you won't. You'll either get divorced or get pregnant. Just let me know where to send the card. I expect the words to echo like a slap, for Mary Ann to recoil or rage. But instead, her face relaxes and is momentarily without expression. Then she smiles. A big, fake party grin. Her white teeth look even whiter under the weak porch light. She stands up. "Well, thanks again for letting me stay," she says, her chapped lips taut with the strain of her smile. At the bar, it's last call. The streetlights reflect off sequined evening bags, sending pulsars of light twinkling around the wrist of ladies swallowing the dregs in their glasses or pulling at the stubs of the night's final cigarettes. Mary Ann, so small and pale, now with a real bruise, deep purple and angry, blanketing her high cheekbone, would be carted at the door. And here I am a grown-up, bullying a childhood friend when I should be offering her something true. But the only truth I have for her is that in Pine Prairie, it's possible for two women to know each other 30 years, and in the end, only be left with meanness between them. "You're welcome," I say. She throws her cigarette over the railing and into the street, then hovers for a moment between her chair and the door. There's time to take it all back, to start over and do what my mother asked me. I'm quiet and the moment passes. "I'll be gone in the morning." She closes the door softly behind her. A good hostess would follow, offer her towels and a toothbrush, but I stay where I am. The wine bar is closing. Men and women get their cars from the parking lot or trip up the street to their homes. The women walk in small groups, high heels clinging against the pavement, talking softly as they tug at the hems of their beautiful dresses. Thank you guys again.